Hey guys, me Sam Stein, managing editor at the Bulwark. I'm here with Congressman Brendan Boyle of Pennsylvania. He demanded that we talk a little bit about the Eagles to start off. So, congrats. As a Giants fan, I'm happy for Saquon. Let's just leave it at that.
Yeah. Hey, I really appreciate you guys giving us Saquon Barkley. A good friend of mine who lives in central New Jersey, which is kind of like the DMZ between Giants fandom and Eagles fandom,
Right.
said that every time he sees Saquon Barkley break another 70-yard run for a touchdown, every is inside. And
I feel good for him. I will say we're going to get into serious stuff in a second, but I feel very glad to see him flourish. It was obvious that I didn't play for the team was holding him back, and that he was the most talented running back in football. And now it's very evident that he is. And I will say, I hate the Eagles, but I kind of want you guys to beat the Chiefs because I'm tired of them winning all the time. So I will root for the Eagles.
That's big of you, Sam. It reminds me when, for the first and only time in my lifetime, the Eagles won the Super Bowl 7-8 years ago.
Yes.
It was the same kind of thing. We were going up Patriots dynasty, and I got a lot of friends texting me, I'm not a Philly fan. I hate the Eagles, but I'm rooting for you guys in the Super Bowl. So
it's amazing that you guys get this underdog. Yeah. The most obnoxious fan base in the world, and yet you get to play the role of underdogs. It's incredible. Wow. All right, let's talk about some serious stuff. As always, subscribe to the feed if you can, please, folks. I really appreciate it. Look, when we initially talked about having you on, it was yesterday, which feels like an eternity ago, and the topic was the debt limit, which and I want to talk about that. I also do want to talk about what happened last night. Let's start with last night and then go to the debt limit because I think the two kind of work better in that way. So last night we get a notification from the Office of Management and Budget that they're going to put basically a temporary spending freeze on all grants that every federal agency issues. Mass confusion happening from the people I'm talking to throughout the government. I'm wondering, have you heard from bureaucrats, from agencies, from people who are involved or who could be dependent on federal aid? What are they telling you? What is your sense of the legality of this? And how shocking is it to Steve? Because it's your power of the purse that's being usurped here.
So it was late last night, late Monday night, that I saw the OMB memo. Again, how many times have we said this in the Trump era? It was both shocking and not surprising. I was actually asked, since I'm ranking member of the Budget Committee, I was asked by my caucus leadership a few weeks ago to basically do a seminar for all House Democrats on this issue of impoundments. Now, you know that you say impoundments, eyes immediately begin to glaze over.
Where? What the hell is that, right?
It's exactly what we're talking about here. It was a fight in the Nixon era with congressional Democrats where he basically, not surprising perhaps, Nixon violated the Constitution and usurped the power of the purse that is literally vested per the Constitution in the legislative branch, the first article of the Constitution and the first article, first branch of government. So that gets litigated. The Supreme Court finds absolutely what he did was illegal and unconstitutional. Further, in 1974, as Nixon was politically weakened going through Watergate, a very important piece of legislation passes, which has really dictated the budget process for the last half century, and that was the Budget and Impoundment Control Act of 1974. That makes it quite clear impoundments are illegal to do unilaterally. If you want to do something called the rescission, basically clawing back money, you can very temporarily, but you ultimately need the approval of Congress.
What does temporarily mean in this case? That's what I'm trying to figure out.
So there's a process of 30 to 45 days that is per that act that you can go through. However, you have to go through all sorts of proper procedures. And just to make this as simple as possible, that memo last night does not qualify under the Budget and Impoundment Control Act of 74. So what they did last night and are attempting to do today, it is unconstitutional. It is illegal. There is very little ambiguity when it comes to this. But I will say, I am not surprised in the least. I've been warning people about exactly this sort of power grab because Russ Vought, the incoming OMB director, assuming he is confirmed, which I think is a safe assumption, he is a brilliant guy that not too many people in the outside world have heard of. He is one of the principal authors of Trump's Project 2025. He is a true believer in all of this very right-wing authoritarian stuff so that Trump can have total power, unchecked by the courts, and just able to not even entertain opposition from Congress. Ultimately, I believe he'll be defeated, but we have to stand up to him in this moment.
Well, so that gets to the issue of how to stand up. So basically, just to simplify it even further, the federal government is basically saying, look, we're going to determine what aid actually gets sent out that Congress has appropriated. Thank you for writing a check, but we'll take it from here. And then the Democratic response, as of this morning, has been to, they're now hosting a press conference. I know Chuck Schumer has said Letitia James is going to file a lawsuit saying that this is unconstitutional. The hope is that the courts intervene and say, no, we're going to put this on hold for the time being while we litigate it. But I'm kind of curious what the political and legislative response is. You say Russ Vought's going to be confirmed. You say that probably because there's 53 Republican senators. All he needs is 50. Are there any levers that Democrats can use that aren't obvious to me to try to make sure that the temporary pause doesn't actually go into effect and that they just don't continue going down this route?
Yeah, I mean, first, we literally are only a few hours into this saga. So I have not even had a much of a chance this morning to talk to some of my colleagues as I'm working here. It's a district week, so I'm working from my district office and had a previously scheduled meeting right before this. So the answer to that question might be very different literally a few hours from now than it is right now. Sure. But I will say that in my view, we as Democrats, and maybe this gets the larger issue when it comes to the debt limit, we need to make sure we use every point of leverage possible because we know that the other side is willing to take completely unconstitutional and illegal steps in order to have total power. So I am very much a believer that Democrats use every leverage point possible, whether that's legislatively or in the courts or in the outside activist community.
So to the point, what is the actual point of a Democrat participation in a budget process or an appropriations process if the federal government's going to turn around and say, thank you for passing this, but we're actually going to spend what we want to spend? Is there any incentive to fund the government even?
Yeah, I will say, I mean, this is where while one cannot have a great deal of confidence in this Supreme Court, I do actually have confidence when it comes to adjudicating this issue because it is so clearly in violation of the law, the clean, plain reading of the law. This is also a matter that has actually been adjudicated in the courts before, and the Supreme Court ruled pretty emphatically in the favor of the legislative branch. So I will say I'm pretty optimistic that Donald Trump and Russ Vought and others will not be able to ultimately get away with what they're doing. The real damage is in the short term, though, the kind of disruptions that they can cause with this temporary pause until it's ordered that they release the funds.
Yeah, I just want to emphasize that. And we're talking about, assistance for people on SNAP. We're talking about assistance for people who need heating. We're talking about international assistance. We're talking about biomedical research. We're talking about PEPFAR. We're talking about so many different functions that the government does involve itself in that ultimately will come to a screeching halt unless something happens quickly with an injection. All right, leverage points. That's essentially what we're talking about, leverage points. And you've come out and you said, you know what? We need to use the ultimate leverage point, which is raising the debt limit. To set the stage, throughout my entirety of reporting on politics, it's always been that Democrats raise the debt limit. Now, yes, people are going to say, well, Barack Obama didn't raise it in 2006. But it was always assumed that the debt limit would be raised. Even if there was a Republican president, a Democrat president, the Democrats would make sure that the debt limit would be raised. And conversely, Republicans would pay chicken with it, the faith and credit of the United States government. And the reason was, Democrats always told me, was that they were responsible stewards of the economy. You are now saying, you know what, I'm done with that. We should use the debt limit actually as a leverage point. Is that not irresponsible?
As a child of the 80s, there was that famous drug commercial. I learned it by watching you, was the tagline.
Oh my God. I learned it by watching you, Dad.
You can tell we're the same age. So let me say to my Republican friend, I learned it by watching you. Look, the last time the debt limit was raised in a major way, it was a Democratic trifecta: Democratic House, Democratic Senate, Democratic President. We raised it on our own. We put on our big pants and took that tough vote. Well, guess what? Now there's a Republican trifecta: Republican House, Republican Senate, Republican President. They want to do all of these radical things. So good luck, guys. I wish you well, and let me know how it works out. If in the future they are unable to do that, and there is a point, and this would have to be determined ultimately by our House Democratic leader, Hakeem Jeffries, and I think all of us in the caucus are going to make sure that he has maximum options available to him. If at some point the judgment is made that it's worth Democrats voting for this, boy, it's going to be a long laundry list if you want our votes, because you are unable to do the most basic function of governing.
You're comfortable with the country defaulting on its debt?
I don't want to see the country defaulting, but ultimately they're the ones who are in charge. If they're unable to actually ensure that the full faith and credit of the United States is upheld, and they want our help, then a long list of Democratic priorities will have to be met before we would give that help. I think that.
What kind of priorities are you talking? Yeah, I mean, I know it's impossible to say right now. We have months of extraordinary measures to exhaust first, but what kind of priorities are you thinking about? And frankly, I mean, does this OMB memo kind of inform the priorities you'll be talking about?
And again, going back to, that's why kind of what we talked about beforehand really dovetails into this nicely. Making sure that we stop all of these bad things that Republicans are talking about doing, or adding $4.5 trillion of the debt in order to further debt finance tax cuts that mostly go to the richest 1%. But I would go even further than that. I'm not satisfied with just stopping bad things from happening. Let's use this as an opportunity to make sure we advance the ball. I mean, I'm reminded of the fact that, this is the longest, and I'm just using this as one hypothetical, but we're right now in it's been 18 years since the last time the minimum wage was increased. That's the longest gap in American history. The last
that's $7.25 right now still.
$7.25 an hour. That's the nation minimum wage. Some states are above that, but here in Pennsylvania, we're still at $7.25 an hour because Republicans here locally also refuse to raise it. The last time the minimum wage was raised, it was because Nancy Pelosi, as Democratic leader, was able to work out a deal with President George W. Bush. He wanted more funding for Iraq. She said, the only way we will play ball is if you agree to increase the minimum wage. Well, here's just one issue area of many where you could see history repeating itself. So if Republicans want to talk about conditioning aid to California, which is egregious, if they want to actually issue a memo saying that completely contrary to the Constitution, they're not going to release funds that were already legally approved by Congress, well, it's about time that Democrats realize that this is not an academic exercise. We need to play hardball.
I hear you. I'm also informed by my history of watching Democrats not play hardball. We'll see if your party follows through on that. Any parting thoughts for your Eagles before we let you go?
Fly, Eagles, fly. I do think actually, I do, taking my fan hat off, I do actually think this Eagles team is the better team over the Chiefs. I'll be watching those referees. I believe it's now illegal to even breathe on Patrick Mahomes. But I think the Eagles pull it out.
You can't get in a yard vicinity of him. You just got to let him lay down.
Eagles fans tend to imagine, and this is because of a lifetime of disappointment and heartache. I will say though, while even myself imagining nightmare scenarios, I think the Eagles are the better team, and I think they pull it out.
All right, we'll have to check back after, not this Sunday, but the Sunday after. Yeah, that's right. Brendan Boyle, thank you so much, man. Really appreciate it. Good luck out there, and thanks for taking the time to talk to us about all this stuff, this chaos. We'll talk to you later.
Thanks, Sam.